everyone, and welcome back to my comfy corner where I talk about things that make me comfy and cozy so I could stop bothering the people around me. And today, you're not wrong, you're not looking at me crazy. One, new room, new comfy corner. You will get acquainted soon and with the coming videos. Two, hopefully better and new camera quality. I'm using my iPad now instead of my iPhone, so shout out, not sponsored but can be. And three, I have my nice little Yeonjun plushie from the Kito Suto. Really not talked about in the community, but should be. It was a very cute animated song that I believe Hyun and Kai either made the characters for or actually helped with animating. So that might be another thing for another day. But I have kept y'all waiting long enough. I have seen the things, I have heard the chitters and the chatters, and I know what you guys have been thinking. Tiana, how do you feel about the new chapter being implemented after the love language, sanctuary? You know, how do I feel? And to that I say, right. I feel right. And I feel like when TXT came out with the concept trailers, it only solidified my point. And so what better way to come back to you all than to talk about TXT, which clearly I can't get enough of, and clearly they can't get enough of me. So that being said, if you have not already, watch my previous videos or breakdowns of TXT lore and all of the songs, which I have done. Girly Pop, stop, drop, and roll on over to those other videos, because I am going to be talking like you guys already know my thoughts and theories about TXT lore, and I'm going to be explaining how I'm right and doing some light refreshing for those that might need a fresh reminder, i.e. me. But I will not be going in depth because I feel like I have over 8 hours of talking about TXT lore. So if you are interested in that, please make sure you look at those videos. I talk about other things as well if you get tired of me talking with TXT. I have a couple more videos coming up that I'm super excited to do. And with all of that being said, I will be segmenting this based off of how they segmented the concept trailers. And I will be talking about my thoughts and theories. If you see me looking over here, it's because I'm looking at my laptop. And if you see me looking up here, it's because I'm looking at my TV. Yes, girl, I have a setup. I might do a mini video so you guys can get a little tour of my comfy corner now. But with all of that being said, let's hop into the first part, which is the Dream Chapter Magic concept trailer and the compilation that TXT has uploaded on YouTube. Okay, so the first trailer that we see, or the first concept trailer that we see, is the Dream Chapter Magic Era. And honestly, there's not too much to talk about because it's really just about the boys finding out that they have magic. Well, it's about the boys meeting up, right? Which is completing the promise and them being able to meet up in Dream World and Real World, right? Because they all go to the same school, Coinky Dink. And they realize that they have magic and they're exploring the world. Now, what I will note are 2 points. There's one point where Yeonjun is just vibing out in the ocean, having a grand old time, chilling, vibing, doing the whole damn thing, flips and tricks. And he pulls in the boys, right? He pulls in them. So I feel like this solidifies my point that Yeonjun really was the main key factor in convincing all of the boys to stay in Magic World, right? Because remember, Yeonjun doesn't have a dream world of his own, so he really can only hang out in the group dream world, because I'm assuming whenever he goes to sleep, he's either in a dark void, he's either like looking at a door that's on fire, because remember, he got kicked out because he broke the rules, something, but it's not pleasant. And so he really only has the boys to rely on, and I feel like in this scene, it's showing that he's convincing them that not only can this be a night thing, but this could be like an old everyday thing. What I will also point out too, which I find very interesting, I did not realize that Yeonjun and Subin had like a little conflict moment, i.e. A la Killa vibe, right? From the very beginning, because there's another scene here where they're doing this little duo dance, and it is very similar to the Killa where they're at odds, they're butting with each other, and this will become prevalent later. I feel like I glossed over the yin and yang that Yeonjun and Subin had in my previous breakdowns, but I want you guys to really understand right? Imagine you're with your 4 other besties, okay? And y'all are having a grand old time. Y'all meet up in school, kiki kaka, having a grand old time. And then you go to sleep, hanshu, and you see them in your dreams. But like, not just in your dreams, like one of those weird trippy, like, oh, I saw y'all in my dreams. But like, no, I am lucid dreaming and I am actively talking to my besties I was just hanging out with at school today. And I have magic powers and I can control everything. And there's this weird cat, we'll get to it later. And all of this fantastical stuff, and they're young, they're in high school, right? So you're going through all of these feelings and things, and then somebody, or like your bestie, right, is just like, hey, why be in the real world when we could just be in this magical fantastical land ourselves, right? Me personally, given how the world is right now, and trust me, I will get to the newest concept trailer. Trust and believe I'm going to talk about it, but that will be later, so I'll reserve my thoughts on that. But the way that the state of the world is right now, especially if you live in the US, I would take up that offer. So the fact that Subin is really the only one from the bitter beginning to the bitter end clashing with Yeonjun on staying in the dream world, it is very interesting. It is very compelling. I wonder if it's because he has super hearing, that he could hear the bullshit at which the cat was talking. Maybe, maybe not. But to see that that conflict was really truly at the beginning is very interesting. Another point, we get to the end of the trailer, right? And we see Hyun and Kai out of all people. We see Hyun and Kai out of all people. At last. And he's in front of a door. And he's doing a smirk and a smile. Well, not even. It pans down to him. He's the last one man standing. And you see the door. And he's smiling in front of the door. And then he walks through the door. And that is the end of the concept trailer for Magic. I feel like flying and falling has not really been, I talk about a lot. There's probably like a flying falling counter somewhere over there. For those that are so inclined, please feel free to do so. But I feel like I did not explain that flying sometimes does not mean wings. I feel like flying is doors. You're able to go through a door, which is another world. I feel like flying is symbolized by doors. And it's interesting that Hyun and Kai's the only one that can access the doors. And the other boys throughout this entire video, they're falling, right? Because they can't fly. They're falling into different worlds. They're falling into sleep. There's a whole album called Free Fall, right? But Hyun and Kai's the only one that can actively go through other worlds because of his wingy baby boy powers. We've discussed this. So I feel like this also solidifies my point of he knows that the cat is lying to them because he knows that what they're doing is falling. They're not flying, but he's going along with it anyway because he wants to stay with the group, which I also feel like solidifies my point of Hyun and Kai never forgot the promise. He was just left. I feel like when he was checking in on Yeonjun, he really was in the overworld. I feel like when the star's asleep, it doesn't mean that the world can't be accessed. It just means that maybe they're limited on their power, or it's like more of a dark campfire sidey scene that we see with Yeonjun's dream world, right? So I feel like, again, my point is right that Hyun and Kai knew from the very beginning that all of this was bullshit, but he went along with it anyway because he did not want to lose the boys again. And in a way is the opposite side of Yeonjun, where yeah, he didn't lose a dream world, but he probably doesn't know where his original dream world is because he's been flying for so long, right? He's been able to access so many dream worlds, and he missed the boys. And to see all the boys sort of forget about him and forget about everything that they built up, I feel like he doesn't want to lose it again. So those are my 3 key points that I pointed out in this music video, or in this concept trailer, that I really wanted to point out that, wow, from the very beginning, I was onto something about the boys discovering the magic, Yeonjun being the main one to pull them into the thought and idea of it. And I feel like, again, that's where Subin and Yeonjun was clashing. I don't think it was a solid, let's do this now, but it was probably Yeonjun floating the idea of like, man, I wish this could have been, like, I wish, like, what is Blue Hour? Really? Right? I feel like he was just tossing around and Subin was just like, no, bestie, that's called death. That's called dying. Let's not do that. So those are my thoughts about the Dream Chapter Magic concept trailer. The next trailer will be the Eternity concept trailer, which I'm super stoked about because eternally, that chapter and the song itself is very story driven and oriented, and I don't think it's a coincidence that eternally, out of all the songs given K-pop Demon Hunter, I know my friends have gotten me to watch it. It's great, it's amazing, love the soundtrack. I don't think it's a coincidence that they did a Demon Hunter version of eternally, of the song eternally, I'm pretty sure it's eternally. I don't think that's a coincidence because out of all the other songs that they could have done Devil by the Window, they could have done Can You See Me, they really could have done any song from the rock era in a Demon Hunter way, but the fact that they chose eternally means something, and I will touch on that in the next segment. Okay, so this is the Eternity, I kept saying eternally, but this is the Eternity concept trailer, and I have so many thoughts. Okay, so I know what you guys are thinking, Tiana. It was playing drama when we first start up, and it's Subin and all the other boys. They're around in their very close knit circle, and then eventually the circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and Subin's the one out. Now, for all you naysayers, you'd be like, Tiana, you said that in the drama song that it was actually Bumgyu that was the deciding factor. He was the one on the outside, and he felt like he was being a part. And I say two things can be true at the same time. I still think that the song drama and the music video that came with it is Bumgyu feeling in between, should I side with the stay in the real world side, or should I side with the go under side, right? But I think that this is before that official divide comes through that we see in this concept trailer, because you got to remember the distinction and the battle between Yeonjun and Subin was there and prevalent from the very beginning, right? Subin could smell some bullshit going on. And I wonder too, because I made note of it, remember Subin's power is hearing. Maybe he could hear the cat's whispers, and that's how he's able to see that Yeonjun is really being the manipulative one here and is convincing the rest of the boys to fall deeper and deeper into wanting to stay in the dream world, right? Because again, this isn't something that you could go to your bestie and be like, hey, let's just fall asleep forever. And then that bestie be like, okay, bet, right? Like, it's probably going to take some time. It's going to take some convincing. It's going to take, some whispers in your ear, Devil by the Window, right? It's going to take some time to convince. And I feel like this shows just that. It started off with them just hanging out and enjoying the dream world and waking up and enjoying the day world. But then eventually it grows farther and farther apart because, of course, you're going to have your own personal cliques back and forth. But the other interesting thing is Yeonjun was always present in the group. It was Yeonjun and it was Hyun and Kai. Remember, they were besties because they both know what's happening and they both want this to happen. If anything, Yeonjun and Hyun and Kai were the most gung-ho to stay in Dream World. Hyun and Kai because he doesn't want to lose his friends again, because he saw them leave before and he doesn't want to see them leave again. And Yeonjun because he doesn't have a dream world of his own and the real world for him really sucks. And eventually the real world sucks for all of the boys, which makes them want to go, right? But then you think, well, why Tay and Bumgyu, right? But Tay and Bumgyu, they're cool, but they're not by themselves. It's Yeonjun. And that doesn't make sense when you think of the context of Lonely Boy and then Thursday's Child, right? Because Lonely Boy has Yeonjun and Hyun and Kai on the track, right? They're the pair. But then Thursday's Child, you have a long way to go. It's Bumgyu, Tay, and Subin. So why wouldn't Subin in that group of three? Why is it Yeonjun in that group of three? And to that I say, this is them slowly being convinced by Yeonjun to stay in the dream world. And then as we pan out and we see that Subin's the only one sort of talking logic, and it's the only one sort of being iced out because he's not trying to get involved with the boys' plan of staying deeper and asleep, and he's not connecting with them like he used to when it was all fun and we had that duality in life. He finally gets up and sees the cat, right? The blue and green eye, the thing that will haunt me to a day in my life. Side note, me and my fiance are considering getting a cat. If you ever wanted to know the animal counter in our house right now, I have 2 guinea pigs and a dog. Her name is Snow, and my guinea pigs are named Twix and Nutmeg. One day you might see them, one day you might not. Who knows? But if we were to get a cat, and it just so happens to be the damn cat from TXT, I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm probably gonna get triggered every time I see that goddamn cat. So keep that in mind. And there will be a separate video about the cat because I just, my blood pressure. Back to Subin. So he sees the cat, and again, I wonder if he sees the cat because he can hear the cat. Another big distinction that I keep making in my previous videos, but I will continue to make, Tay-Tay's power isn't that he could see good, right? So he wouldn't be able to see the cat, even if the cat's right there, in terms of the astrophysical, right? His thing is that he could see the future. So he only gets the bits and bobs and the pieces of the future, but he doesn't know how they ended up there. Raven Simonex, right? So I feel like it makes a lot more sense in the grand scheme of things that Subin is able to hear the cat whispering all these things and having this influence over the boys and is trying to tell them, but he can't because the boys don't believe him, but also he hasn't built that strong connection like Yeonjun was able to, probably with the help of the cat and Hyun and Kai being on his side as well. And that is where we end off with the Eternity chapter. That makes a lot of sense to me because it only solidifies again that Subin was not a willing participant in the burning down of their dream world and in being booted out of that, right? He was not an active and willing participant in it, but he felt like if he didn't do it, then he would be alone. And that's another thing that you got to think of. These boys are in high school. I think that this story and lore is such a beautiful coming of age story. I would have loved for it to be a webtoon of its own, even though I feel like their whole lore and story is its own, story of its own. But I think it's a really great story of a coming of age for friendship, for growth, for maturity, for individuality. It's just such a great story, and I think that's why I'm so obsessed with it. So that is the main point. That is the focal point of this. I feel like with the previous concept trailer, we got a lot more concepts in, even though it was very simple, such as the boys discovering their magic. But when it comes to this, it's sort of very focused on you seeing, hey, look, there's a cat and Subin is trapped. What's going on? And I feel like I called it. I predicted it. A lot of this is going to be me hyping myself up because for a very long time I thought that I was crazy. There's only one other girl on YouTube that I could see that is talking about this, and her name is Lena Sunflowers. Shout outs to you, girl. You did the legwork when it was happening in real time, but I haven't seen her posting and talking about the stuff that I am. And also I have a very different theory and concept that she does, and that is perfectly fine. However, I just feel right. Take that what you will. But yeah, that is that end of the concept trailer. And the next is the freeze, which I really love the concept of. Oh my goodness. So let's get into that. Okay, so Freeze is probably one of my favorite concept trailers. I think that they really went off with the choreo. I know that they were sweating that day. I think that the visuals are very beautiful and gorgeous, just to tell a simple concept, in all honesty. But one of the big things to note is, remember last one, we saw Subin was at the far end of the table. He was not connecting with the boys. He wasn't there with them. But now, magically, in this Freeze concept trailer, right now, he's the player one controller. Now he's the main one with Yeonjun in the backseat, and they're all playing and having fun. And I think that symbolizes that he would rather not fight the feeling and fight the bad guy or the cat that we see, and he would rather just go along with the friends. And maybe in his mind he's like, if I go along with it, I could protect him, I could keep him safe. Maybe that's what's going on with this. But then we see they're in the mall, there's this whole fight scene, it's this whole choreo, and instead of fighting alongside the boys, right, he is stuck. He's like frozen off in his own section. And it makes me believe that maybe what really triggered it was he was always having a bad time, right? But now the other boys are having a bad time, and now they're realizing, hey, maybe we can stay here. I do wonder too if the ice being thrown is like reality, hitting them hard. Remember, each of the boys had their own thing that they were going through in the real world, that would cause them to want to actually go into the dream world and stay in the dream world and listen to Yeonjun. So I feel like that moment when he was frozen and the rest of the boys were running and fighting, and then they were at the bottom, I feel like Yeonjun was already there, and that's why he was already frozen in time up there, while the other boys sort of had to come to that conclusion himself. Now, as he jumps over to get to the boys, he's what? Falling, right? And the rest of the boys see him falling, which they think is him being able to control the dream worlds that they get to be in. Because remember, that's the cat's power, but he does not have control of the cat in this instance, right? He only has control of himself, really, and to convince the boys what to do, because he's given up that power to the cat. That was what the horn situation was giving, right? So he has convinced the boys then, right? Because now they're all dancing together, and he falls again after punching that big ice rock. I'm assuming that that's really their big moment where they have that car scene in 0x1 Love Song, right? When they're in that car and then it sets on fire, that whole thing, that was symbolic of them being like, we're not going back into the real world, we're going to the dream world, we're committed to this shit. And so him falling and then them all freezing, I feel like is a representation of them not coming back to the real world. They decided to stay in the dream world because of all of the issues that they're running into, which again proves my point that I'm right about their whole situation, where it was mainly Yeonjun convincing them, right? And then it wasn't really a point in this, but I wish that there was a little hint and nod that, again, Hyunin Kai knows what's going on, because he definitely knows what's going on. But I love it. I thought it was an amazing concept trailer. I think that that's really all they were saying was like, all right, the boys have finally fallen. They're now going through with the action of staying in dream world, and then they stay frozen. And I think that was such a great concept, a great concept trailer. 10 out of 10. Amazing. All right. So this is the name chapter. Ooh. I love that they combined it all into one, because honestly, we're saying the same thing in the name chapter. Love it. So the name chapter combines temptation. Hold on, I'm looking at my wall of, you can't really see it, but like this is my wall of albums down here. It really combined temptation and free fall into one. Which I personally really like. In the chaos chapter, I think it also combined the chaos chapter. But anyways, basically what happens is, I'm right. I need to stop. No, basically we see it again, that Yeonjun again is the one to convince the boys. We have that cool, very beautiful animation with the cat and Devil by the Window luring the boys in, telling them that they could fly, and they can't, but they believe it anyway. And then we move from that to this very cool wingy fight sequence, right? And I think that this represents what I was talking about, where it's the boys sort of going back and forth on, do we really want to stay in the dream world forever, or do we still want to have that duality in life? And if you notice, in this very cool wingy sequence of like right and wrong, left and right, like the black and the white, right? You see that Yeonjun and Hyunin Kai are duoed, right? And even Hyunin Kai is trying to convince Subin, but Subin then goes to Tay, and then they're having their own thing. But you know who's left at the end? Bumgyu. And this solidifies my point that Bumgyu really was the deciding factor on if they decided to stay in the dream world or not. Because remember, majority rules, it's 5 of them. I think that was very clever in how they did it, because it was a big decision, the right and the wrong. And they're wearing white because they think being in dream world is the right thing, right? And also they have wings. They believe that they will get wings if they decide to stay in dream world, and they could fly to different worlds, and they can have control and power in that, which they don't. It's white, but the black represents, no, we don't get to fly. We don't get to have this power. We get to stay in the real world and the dream world. And Bumgyu leaving as white in that little sequence right there tells me, and should tell the audience if you listen to my things, that he decided to stay in the dream world, and it was his fault in a way that they're stuck in this situation. Because you know what happens right after that scene when it's left with him in the white and the mirror, and he has that little like, yeah, I'm gonna choose you, that situation, right? We pan back into the infamous dream house. This is their dream world where they're there as a group. You notice this in Cat and Dog, right? This is what their dream island initially looked like when they're initially together. They're in their iconic dream house, but this time it's Bumgyu's perspective that starts it, and he's in the center, right? Because he was the deciding factor of it all. And then you see the house is up and up high. This is again reminiscent to Cat and Dog, where they were piled high up in the house, but this time now it is falling, or it is floating, and they are being shaken out because they decided to destroy their dream world, and they decided to stay in the dream world and break the rules, right? So they're being thrown out. Now, when this happens, they all look at Subin. And I think that's also very great to note. I think that they know that this is what they wanted to do, but Subin is still the leader and the protector of the group. So they look to him to be like, are we good? Are we sure? And then he's like, well, we're already in this shit anyway. Let's get down and let me take the fall first, so that way we get there safely. So they all one by one fall out of their dream world because, again, they decided to stay. And I think another fantastic point to note, because I think what I will say is, I know I'm arguing with myself in the wall, but one of my very biggest controversial things that I have said when it comes to lore is that Hunan Kai was was knowledgeable about everything that's going on, and he's the real snake of the group, not Yeonjun, even though Yeonjun is really the one that effectively caused all of this. But Hunan Kai is also on Yeonjun's side, and he also is actively aware of what's happening, and he knows the cat's lying, and he knows that he has the ability to fly, but he's not letting the rest of the boys know. And I think it was done in a very subtle way at the end of this concept trailer, when he was the last one to fall, and instead of just jumping out like the rest of the boys do, he turns to us, the audience, looks at us, and does a little cheeky smile before he falls down, because he knows that's not what flying is. He knows what true flying is, and he knows that the boys are doing it wrong, but he doesn't want to lose them, and so he jumps down anyway. And I think that was very powerful. I think that's a pretty dope concept. I love that my winky baby boy is somehow the drama of the season, and he is, and he ate that. He did in fact eat, left 0 crumbs. Honestly, I'm surprised you need a Swiffer jet. But I say this all to say the name chapter was very powerful in very different ways. We got Sugar Rush Ride, we got Devil by the Window, we got some certified bangers. Oh, the Free Fall chapter. Anyways, I think that the concept trailer is done very well, and again, solidifying my point about peer pressure, about how influential this cat was, not only to Yeonjun, but to the rest of the boys. Just the whole scheme of it all and the buildup of it all wasn't just we're just going to decide it today. It really was a multi-day and a lot of convincing to get it done, and I feel like the concept trailers are showing that as well. So, with all of it being said, let me go to the final concept trailer of the compilation, which is the Tomorrow chapter, which is where we're at right now as an audience, and I cannot wait to tell you my thoughts because this is the whole purpose of this video. Alright, we are finally in the last trailer of the compilation that was released, and this is the Tomorrow concept trailer, the Tomorrow chapter, if you will. That is, of course, the mini-sode, and that is also including Sanctuary. Do not think that that doesn't... It sort of includes Sanctuary, it sort of doesn't include Sanctuary. We'll get to that when we get to it. So, very beautiful, very great way to tie up all the loose ends. I feel like the concept trailers in a compilation format shows that the creators of this story and lore knew what they wanted to do from the very beginning, and I'm so glad that I have cracked the code in figuring it out. And, you know, honestly, I am free and available to be hired. My monthly pay can be discussed at a later date if you like Hybe and or whoever created the concept for TXT, because I have great ideas for what the next saga should be. If you wanted, like, I feel like I have earned my spot in being a TXT fan, and I feel like I have earned my right to talk about lore and to help you in the future. But let's talk about the trailer. Of course, it starts off with the boys. It starts off with the boys in this deserty area, and this is sort of like a little flashback into what it would look like if they started over. You see, it's a desert. It looks like they like landed into a new world, and that's probably because they have to sort of build back up the dream world that they destroyed where they left it, right? And they have the fennec fox. Now, the fennec fox is not the cat. It is definitively not the cat. I will stand 10 toes down on it. There are technically two cats, but they are different cats. The fennec fox represents the promise. It represents the star. It represents the girl. It is all of that into one. Just know that when I say the cat, I mean the evil cat that has been doing all of this other crazy stuff, right? So the cat, or the fennec fox, which is the promise, has been with the boys from the very beginning. It's just that they have forgotten its name and haven't been able to see it, right? And then we fast forward, and now they're in an interrogation room, right? The interrogation room, the detective is the cat, right? He does not want you to remember the promise's name because that means that his power and rule is over, and you're not going to be able to play with him all day, every day like you want. And so he tries to convince them that this is all just a story, that this is all a part of the theme that we're doing. And another thing that I'd like to note as well, that I noted in my previous videos, you recognize from the music videos when they're finally in the cat scraps, right? Like when we start talking about Sugar Rush Ride, right? They're in an island vibe. It's a very small, intimate universe or world that they're exploring and getting to have fun in. But as they get closer and closer to the truth, and as they get further and deeper in, there's a lot more elaborate worlds that they're staying in. I feel like that isn't done haphazardly. I feel like the cat is doing everything in his power to try to make the boys want to stay and have fun while puppeteering them, while also trying to get them to forget, which he effectively has done, the promise, right? And the reason why I say forget the promise is because the boys knew what the promise was, or they knew what the deal was from the very jump. They kept referencing the star. They kept, doing all the dances with the concept of the magic trailer. But now they can't even remember. They haven't even done a star, right? Like in some of the other previous concept trailers, they do at least one star or hand in. But in this one, they really don't until they remember. And I feel like it's also very interesting, right, that one, Hunan Kai has an eye patch over his eye. I think that's turning a blind eye, right? I think that is symbolic of him turning a blind eye to him knowing how to get out and knowing that they are not truly flying, but they are falling, but still going along with it anyway. But the other thing that's interesting to note is that Yeonjun had the note that would hint to them finding out who the promise is or what the name is, but he kept it. He didn't share it with the rest of the boys, which again leads me to my point that Yeonjun knew first. Yeonjun knew first and foremost about the promise and remembered the name, but he was debating on if he even wanted to share it with the rest of the boys because he still wanted to stay in the dream world. And then there's the skipping stones thing, right? Where you see Bumgyu and Tay skipping stones, and then they finally skip it to Subin, which, who remember, has been the number one biggest hater of I didn't want to be here next to Tay, but has been the number one biggest hater of I don't want to be here. And they finally skip it to Subin, and Subin realizes, oh, y'all want to leave now. I gotta help. And they have that little coalition together, right? Then you see that scene with Yeonjun where he fantasizes what it'd look like if they were adults, and maybe he wants to be a chef and how that looks, and maybe Subin, right, because I believe Subin was behind him because we get a flashback of Subin of what he will look like as an adult. So I think he was there with him behind the mirror that he was looking at, reflecting on his life, right? I feel like Subin's like, yeah, and I could be an adult too. Maybe I could be the one cleaning up the place. Who knows? And that being what convinces Yeonjun to finally reveal the name and bring it to the boys, right? Because it's not like he showed the little hint that he got that helped him remember who the fox was, right? He threw that out. He was just like, you know what? No. But I feel like something made him go back. Again, I think it was Subin, i.e. the killer. And then he takes the Fox that was locked up, right? And he tries to get the rest of the boys to remember by bringing it to the rest of the boys, right? It's not like he did the heist with the boys. He did it by himself. He was on his own scooter. And I feel like that's such a powerful turning point, because the biggest influence and reason that the boys are here is because of Yeonjun. So the fact that he is now realizing where he's wrong, albeit with Zubin's help, he is now risking his life for the boys to get them back to the promise, which is the Finnick Fox. And we see that at the end where the fox is there, the cat is stopped, right? He's prevented from going. He was stopped by the rest of the boys, a la come back for more, if you will. And then they all have their crowns, which is reminiscent to the very, very initial thing when they were little boys and they had their people crowns and made the promise initially with the fox. And the fox is just like, don't worry, I never forgot y'all. Glad y'all remember me. That is the end. We are now back into the swing of things, which is tomorrow. And I think that's such a cute note to end off on. I think it's such a great story. I'm so glad for tomorrow to get here whenever it releases. I think it's the 17th. So hopefully I put this out before the 17th, because I will be upset if I put this out after the album releases and then I have to do another video immediately after this releases. But it's, again, a very beautiful story. I think it was done thematically very well. I think it did a good job keeping people guessing, me re-theorizing, and me recrafting until the very end. And I think that the tomorrow concept and hopefully this is the last album, right? I think that this is the end of an era and of a story lore, and probably the beginning of something else, like I said in the Star Sanctuary album, where it is the end of them being boys and them turning into men, and now navigating with their choice of staying in tomorrow and what that looks like. And I think that is such a gorgeous way to end an era and an arc. If they do end it, please God end this, because I want a new thing to craft and theorize. But also, I'm right. And you know, I feel like this is such a full circle moment for me. I'm going to ribble and ramble. It's my YouTube. I get to do what I want. I feel like this is such a full circle for me, because I remember where I was when I first got into TXT, and where I was in life, and where I was in my mental and in my physical and my health and well-being. And I truly feel like I connect with so many of the different boys in different areas. Like, I feel like I too was the person that would put other people's feelings and emotions in front of my own and sort of go with the flow, because I didn't want to lose those people. But then you grow and realize that if they really were your friends, they would be with you through the end, regardless of what you decide to do, right? And being okay with maybe not having that person at the end of the tunnel, but knowing that what you had was right. Or just in general with just growing up and getting in tune with reality, just facing it head on, because we truly are in a scary time right now. And sometimes you just really wish that you could just disassociate or do something else or ignore it, but you have to face your problems. It's going to be worse if you don't. And I just feel like the story of it all, and me being right, but the story of it all is truly a beautiful and gorgeous story. I would love to see this as a movie, even if TXT doesn't do it. I would love to see this concept as a book or a movie or an animated situation, from beginning to end, without me having to theory craft, but just beginning to end the story that I have said and the story that they are clearly presenting. I would love to see it on the screen, because I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous story. And I love it. So those are my thoughts. That is me breaking down every single concept trailer in the bundle. And I love that it's called Together We Become Tomorrow, because that's also a very focal point, that it really took all of them coming together and all of them coming to a realization that we're getting older. Quarter life crisis is real for me, but we're getting older, and we have to face it, but we don't have to face it alone. You could always do it together. And I think that's such a good message to do. So I have rambled and I have broke down all of them, but I would be remiss not to mention the newest concept trailer that they have released. So as a little bonus treat for you, making it all the way to the end of this video, I'm going to hopefully do a lightning round of my thoughts on the newest concept trailer that does a sneak peek on what we can expect from the new album. All right, lightning round, though I doubt that it will actually be lightning. The Star Chapter Together concept trailer. I love that we are back in the Star Chapter because, again, we now know that we have the promise. It is there. It is beautiful. It is amazing. It is so many emotions in one. I cannot wait for this full album. It's more than 5 songs. Oh my goodness. Now, side notes on how I feel about the new album and listening to the snippets. I'm excited. I can't wait to hear the solo songs. It sounds like each of the boys have their own solo song. Can't wait to dissect that as well. I'm so happy it's 10 songs. We've been getting 5-song albums for a while, or just singles, and that's fine. Now, my personal thoughts and feelings, like a little nugget, I miss their rock era. I really do miss Chaos, Freeze, you know, I really miss Good Boy Gone Bad era. I know that we're not getting it in this album, and that's fine. I guess I'll have to be okay with that. But I miss their little Rocky. I miss their little rock era. I do. But okay. The concept trailer. I think I was debating back and forth on whose birthday it was. But I think it was Subin's birthday. I think because I'm still going back as I'm thinking about it. I think Yeonjun had the cake. No, I think it's Yeonjun's birthday. I think it's Yeonjun's birthday. I think it's Yeonjun's birthday. I think Subin had the cake because all the boys were on the opposite side while Yeonjun was going up to them. So I think it's Yeonjun's birthday. And as they're celebrating his birthday, we find out that the world is in chaos, sort of similar to what's going on right now. And so he's like, I left the dream world for this. I paid $5 for this. I paid 10. So I feel like it's Yeonjun's birthday. I'm locking it in that it's Yeonjun's birthday. Even though it doesn't make sense because when it releases, it's closer to Hyun Kai's birthday because Hyun Kai's an August baby, just like me. Anyways, it's Yeonjun's birthday. The boys try to do a surprise birthday party to celebrate, and it just so happens on the day of his birthday, he finds out that the world's ending. He sees it on his phone. He throws it at the cake drops. The boys don't know what's going on, but Subin is the one to pick up the phone, right? It's not the other boys that see what was on the phone that made him upset. They're trying to calm Yeonjun down. He throws his crown down. That is very symbolic. That means that he doesn't want to remember what they went through. He wants to just go back in the dream world. He wants to do this shit all over again. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Anyways, he wants to go back into the dream world. He wants to stay there. The world is shit. He's upset at the boys because he felt like they convinced him into doing something, and turns out he was right. In his feelings and emotions, he feels like he was right into just leaving. And so as he's leaving, that summons the cat. Remember, the cat never got fully defeated. They kept the cat around, and I can't wait to see how that dynamic worked when the cat was still around. Maybe they just, because remember, can't we leave the puma alone? They decided to keep the cat. Because it's like, what if I was the cat? Like, what if I was abandoned alone? What about blah, 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 blah. You should kill that bitch when you saw it. Just shoot it dead. Don't get on me, PETA. I'm not talking about an actual cat. I'm talking about the manifestation of the cat. Anyways, so the cat comes back after hearing this and starts trouble in their dream world. I think that they're in the dream world in this sense. Excuse me, I don't think they're in the real world. And so the cat tries to take Yeonjun, but then it is Tay, remember his future vision. He's like, oh nah, I'm Raven Simone. This shit is not happening again. I'm not going through this. And so he pulls Yeonjun, reminds him who he is in his name. I wonder if them remembering their names is also symbolic and powerful. Anyway, reminds him of who he is, right? And it's just like, we can't do this shit again. We gotta push forward, but we're here together. And then he saves Tay, right? They have their little thing, and then Yoon and Kai's just like, well, fuck it. I've already been down in the dumps. But then that's when Bumgyu comes and saves him, and then Hyun and Kai saves Bumgyu. They both all save each other, and while they're having that, nobody's there to save Subin. And I think that is so powerful because I have spent this whole video talking about how Subin has been the main leader and has been the main savior of the boys, actually. That he's been the voice of reason. He's been probably the cheerleader and the most optimistic of what the world can be. And now, since he saw the video of everything wrong that's going on, he finally needs help. He's the one that needs saving, because he probably looked at that video and was just like, damn, the world is shit. And look at where my friends are. They're not even here to save me. And so the cat was able to latch onto him. Also very reminiscent to what happened in Eternity, the concept trailer for Eternity, where all the boys are on one side and he just felt alone. So he probably felt it again, got triggered. The cat was able to take him and to make him believe to stay in Dream World, that he stays there and he's captured. And so now the boys have to save Subin and remind him about what he told them, which is tomorrow's worth living when you have someone to do it with together. And I think that is such a beautiful concept. Also, things to note, things that you thought that I didn't notice but did notice. Yeonjun ripping off his horn and ripping the reality. I feel like that solidifies my point again, that Yeonjun's true power is not only to control the cat, but also to be the prince of the world, right? Like, he's able to create realities. And I think that's what he did. He was able to destroy the reality that they were in, but then create a new one to find where Subin is. But he could create them and he could destroy them, but he can't fly to them. And I think that was also a very focal point that I made in my previous videos as well, that even though Yeonjun can control what the worlds look like and how the realities are, they still can't fly to it. They still have to fall to each one. And that is the prevalent point where we see Bumgyu, who has the hurt heal abilities. Glad he's finally becoming relevant. Bumgyu ends up healing Hyunkai's back and getting him his full wings, because remember, he has a half wing. He's my half wingy baby boy. And so that also makes sense on why he was sort of going along with what the other boys were doing, because he truly could not help the other boys fly because he could only fly himself. I wonder if that's also how they ended up getting separated as little kids. Something happened to where he broke his wing and he wasn't able to fly the boys to other worlds, and so maybe that's what made them feel like, oh, well, this same old dream world is boring, we're gonna leave. So anyway, Bumgyu heals Hyunkai's wings, and with that healing, he's able to make all of the boys fly and fly to Subin and help him and hug him and let him know, hey, please don't go through this. We want you to live in the real world. We want you to experience it. We need to face tomorrow together. We can be the change. And that is the concept trailer. Wow, it was so beautiful. Wow, it was so powerful. They really said movie budget for this. My thoughts, I think, again, beautiful story. I think that this concept trailer was needed, especially in the time that we are currently in. I do hope that I hope that this new album gives me the vibe that I'm hoping, which is like sadness, happiness, closure. But overall, very beautiful and well thought out concept trailers. Very beautiful story. I'm so glad I'm right. I was so scared when I looked at the concept trailers that everything that I have put in and said was wrong, but I am so right, and I feel vindicated, and I feel like all the hard work that I put into making these theories as fun and entertaining as I have it in my head to you guys makes it all the more worth it. But let me know what you think. Do you think that I'm wrong? I'm not. But do you think that I'm wrong? Do you have your own thoughts and opinions? What's your favorite concept trailer? Mine is still the Freeze. I think that they just popped off with the Freeze concept trailer. I think it went bananas in the visual effects and the dancing and the performance. So yeah, let me know all of that in the comments below, and what else you would like me to make a video on. I do videos on other things aside of TXT, believe it or not. But yeah, let me know what you guys want to see. Thank you so much for listening to my Ribbles and Rants. I hope that you guys like my new comfy corner space, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!